Support for WCBU's On Deck comes from State Farm agent Aaron Kilgore. A Peoria native and active community member, Aaron offers both financial and insurance services to customers at their Sterling Plaza location. Information at aaronismyagent.com. This is WCBU.
Ticks are small insects that could become a big problem this summer. That's just one of the things you'll want to hear about to start your day for Wednesday, April 24th. I'm Colin Shope, and this is WCBU's On Deck. First on deck today, it's been more than 2 months since the Peoria Fire Department closed the Riverview Plaza high-rise downtown. Many tenants have since moved out of the building, and city officials still aren't sure when repairs might get done. WCBU's Joe Deacon reports.
Peoria City Manager Patrick Urich says assessments of the building after it was closed in February found problems with the fire suppression system, the fire alarm, the elevators, and the parking deck.
Those all still remain. The owner of the building has not pulled any permits. So at this point in time, I really have no indication of when that work will be completed.
Peoria County property tax records show the building's owner as MJ Illinois, a limited liability corporation whose sole manager is Jung-Hoon Kim of Georgia. Attorney Sean Cusack of Cusack and Gilfillan had offices on the 15th floor. He says after the shutdown, building management initially said they were working to address the issues.
But as we would go there, you would expect to see a million fire sprinkler trucks, or contractors all spread out. There was nobody there. It was just a ghost town.
Cusack says his firm has moved out and is now in a temporary location, adding he believes they were one of the last tenants to leave. Urich says the owner needs to pay for the repairs or sell the building.
Or it may go through foreclosure and the bank may take it back over. But those are all options that are out there that we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Multiple attempts to contact Kim or his representatives were unsuccessful. For WCBU's On Deck, I'm Joe Deacon.
Here are some other stories we're following in the WCBU newsroom. The Beacon City Council took 3 steps Monday aimed at putting the city back on its financial feet. And a Peoria-based voice coach is offering a course not only to teach singing, but train the body and mind. Find more of these stories and all the details at WCBU.org. Ticks are pretty small, but the diseases they spread can pack a wallop. Rich Ager from Illinois Public Radio spoke with a researcher who says ticks are not only spreading, but are now active for more months of the year than in the past.
Brian Allen has been researching ticks for about 24 years. It started when he was a college student. He had a summer internship working on the ecology of Lyme disease in upstate New York. Allen found it interesting to be out catching ticks and testing them for the Lyme pathogen.
And what really struck a chord with me is I was working on private property. So I was going up to people's doors, knocking on their door, asking them if I could collect ticks on their land. Once they got over their initial shock of sort of, what I was doing there, everybody I spoke to in that part of the country had a personal experience with Lyme disease. They'd had it themselves, a family member had had it, and I came to realize that people were really personally affected by that disease, and it really motivated me. It made me realize I could do something with my biology training that would be helpful to people.
And I have to ask you, when you're out catching ticks, do they ever catch you?
All the time. I've been bitten more times than I can count by ticks in my life.
Is this, I guess, part of the process? You have to check your body when you're done in the field every day.
That's right, yeah, and I really impress that upon my students. It's well documented that that's one of the most effective ways to prevent tick-borne disease. Most pathogens transmitted by ticks are not instantly transmitted. It takes a while for the tick to bite you and for the pathogen to go from the tick to the human. And so if you're working in places where there are ticks, if you check yourself a couple times a day, and I mean really check yourself, you can find those ticks and remove them before they infect you. And so once I've gotten good at that, I've gotten really good at preventing myself from being exposed to tick-borne diseases.
Is that advice you give to people working in the yard, for example? Do they need to check themselves every time they come in?
100%. If you're living or working in an area where ticks are common and you're concerned about tick-borne disease, there's a couple things you can do to protect yourself. Some repellents are more effective against ticks than others, especially repellents with permethrin are good at repelling ticks. Physical barriers are really helpful too. So tuck your pants into your socks, tuck your shirt into your pants. That creates a physical barrier between you and the tick, and it makes it easier for you to notice the tick when they get on you. And then finally, at the end of a day of gardening, before you take a shower, really give yourself a thorough check for ticks. And if you find them, use the appropriate methods to remove them. And if you do those things in combination, you have a pretty good shot at preventing an illness.
Let's go back to your early time in upstate New York.
Sure.
What you said just about everyone you talked to had some sort of story. Can you give us an idea of what you were hearing from people?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lyme disease is a tough disease to deal with for a couple of reasons. One is it's hard to diagnose. The symptoms can be kind of nonspecific. So people get flu-like symptoms in the summertime. Many people associate a bullseye rash with Lyme disease, and it's true. Some people who get Lyme disease get a bullseye rash, but you don't always. And so it's hard to diagnose, and if people get sick and they don't treat it right away, it can form into a chronic illness. And that chronic illness is much harder to treat. And so a lot of the people I spoke to in New York, which has a very high prevalence of Lyme disease, had horror stories about having developed the chronic illness or having a loved one who developed the chronic illness. And last I checked, about 20% of the people who develop chronic Lyme disease they never are cured of it. And so it becomes a debilitating, lifelong condition where it affects their health, it affects their mental state, it can affect their ability to work. And so the economic losses from Lyme disease are considerable because you can take people who are otherwise healthy and productive, and they lose that as a result of having developed chronic Lyme disease.
Brian Allen is a professor of entomology at the University of Illinois Champaign and does research on vector-borne diseases. Allen says there are now at least 3 tick species in Illinois that pose major health risks. He says they're spreading in part due to climate change and partly due to wildlife, especially white-tailed deer, as their populations increase in many states. He does not want to scare people away from enjoying the mental and physical benefits of spending time outdoors. He says just take the proper precautions. Rich Egger reporting.
Now, before we let you go, today is a regular meeting of the Tazewell County Board. Those meetings start at 6 p.m. at the Tazewell County Justice Center in Pekin. And that's all for today. You can subscribe to WCBU's On Deck podcast on the NPR app, Apple, or Spotify.